Available on Blu-ray from MVD Visual is the 2022 film Candyland. Remember the old board game about the swamp that was made of like molasses and the gumdrop forest? And well, forget that. This is a film about truck stop hookers and murder. Not a board game. Not boring in the least. So this is a film that is like the dark side of truck stop women. Directed by John Swab and starring Olivia Luccardi, Sam Quartin, and William Baldwin, who I hadn't seen in anything in a long time. And you know, the years have passed and he showed up and I'm just like, oh, that's the guy from Flatliners. Wow. So it's a pretty grim tale, really. It's funny, in the director's commentary for this, he mentions that he sees it as a dark comedy, and he said, you know, with repeated viewings, you'll see that it's a comedy. And I just only watched it once, and then again with the commentary, and I'm like, I didn't see a whole lot that was funny in this film. This is really pretty grim. There were some light moments here and there, but overall, it's pretty dreary, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. So what you have here is the story of a small group of truck stop prostitutes on the working. It's like a motel attached to a truck stop, but they kind of generally will work. Some of what they do will be in their rooms, and some of it will be in the various vehicles of people who pull up and flash their lights looking for a good time. This is a truck stop that's in, I want to say Wyoming. I think I wrote it down. Did I write it down? I didn't write it down. It's in the Midwest, upper Midwest. How about that? It's the last truck stop on Route 66, basically, is how they put it. So it's pretty desolate. The surroundings are, you know, snow-peaked mountains, and it looks kind of just cold and desolate, and it looks like the kind of thing you would see if you were out on the road. We follow a small group of these workers who just, they do their thing, they make their money, they have their fun, and that's just it. That's the cycle of their life. Coming up against occasionally creeps and people who abuse them, and occasionally nice people, and occasionally weird people. So into this group comes a cast off from this religious cult that you see earlier. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Into this group comes this cast off from a religious cult who had previously been trying to get them to, you know, save their souls, and the rapture is coming and all this kind of thing. She is found huddled and unhappy and needs a place to stay, and they take her in, and they sort of show her the ropes, and they say, you know, the madam says, you know, nobody stays for free, so if you're here, you got to work. So they teach her the ropes, and she sort of begrudgingly becomes one of them. And as this is all happening, suddenly people just start turning up dead. People start turning up. I say stop. They stop living and start turning up dead at the truck stop. And who will survive and what will be left of them? I will tell you no more than that. The film does have a couple of twists that you don't really see coming that are very dark and grim. And when the murders happen, we eventually do see the murders happen, and they're very grim and bloody and just blitzkrieg murder. And it's a grim film, you know. I guess overall I liked it. I didn't love how it was constructed, because ultimately I don't really want to give anything away. But let's say that without giving much away, okay, if you don't want to hear what I'm going to say that kind of gives something away, just mute this video or your TV right now, and then I'll talk, and then I'll do this when it's okay. We used to do this on the old show. So mute your video. So pretty much everybody in the film that you like winds up dead. Okay, spoiler over. So that aspect of the film, ultimately, I'm just like, well, who am I watching this film for? So I don't really, you know. So anyway, so it's very grim, it's very edgy. It opens, the opening shot, for which I thank the director. The opening shot is one of the prostitutes. It's just like it cuts in on this woman just riding this trucker for all he's worth, and she's naked and he's not. And apparently in the commentary they said this was an actual guy they found at a truck stop, and they said, hey, you want to be an extra in a movie? And he said sure. And then they said action, she jumped on him, and he rode with it, baby. So film is presented in 5.1 or 2.0 stereo with English subtitles if you want it. It is set in 1996. And it's just, for me, ultimately, it felt kind of nihilistic. Like, it's just like, who am I supposed to care about in this? And it's just like relentlessly grim until it's over. It's just super grim and unpleasant for most of it. I thought it was an interesting peek into that world. It reminds me of another film whose title I sadly can't remember, that was like an indie drama probably back in the 90s or early 2000s, that was about this world of the truck stop prostitutes, the lot lizards, as it were. And there's a sequence where they sort of go through the ropes with the new girl, and they tell her how it all works and what the signals are and what you do and how you do it. And I thought that was interesting, just an insight into like a subculture. The cast overall is rather likable, and also very explicit film. I mean, you don't see really what is being done explicitly in the film, but there is a lot of nudity of the degree that you don't often see in most mainstream films. So just be aware of that. It's really, I guess if I had to categorize it, I'd probably call it a horror movie. Indie horror. It starts off as a drama, and I popped this in blind, so I didn't know where it was going to go. But ultimately, in the end, I would say it sort of almost kind of becomes a slasher movie. So it's got that going for it. But it's one of those things where if you don't have anybody to really connect with in the film, I'm going back to the lack of likable characters and the little spoiler thing I said. You feel a little direct. I felt a little directionless watching it because there's nobody to really hook into, to sort of want to follow through to the end of the film, because let's just say not everybody makes it to the end of the ride. So anyway, it also, I'm not personally a religious guy, but I get a little tired of seeing so many movies where they treat anybody who's religious as like a wild-eyed zealot or a zombie. I don't think that's the case for everybody who's religious, or the majority of people who are religious. So that I find a little tiresome. That this movie kind of had that going on, but you might say that it was really, that portrayal was really only specific to the people who were portrayed in the film, because that's what they were. So I'm just going to sort of tell you about all that. So ultimately, I thought it was decently made, well shot, and somehow they scored like an incredibly recognizable, it's on the Blu-ray menu too, an incredibly recognizable 80s pop song that plays under the end credits. And I was like, wow, how did they do that? There's a couple songs in here you'll recognize, which is always impressive to me for an indie movie, because I don't know if you know that music rights are just like the worst thing about film, because they're incredibly expensive to get a song, and then it's incredibly expensive to like get it for video. And that's why so many things come out. Or in the old days, they used to come out with, special home video version where the music was altered because they couldn't, WKRP has never been out. Not that I should be talking about WKRP and Candyland in the same review, but KRP has never been released since it was originally on with all the music intact because of music rights. So for an indie film to get a recognizable pop tune or a recognizable rock song or any music is really cool. So bravo to you for that. So extras are a commentary by the director, which is pretty low key, but does tell you the circumstance of the production and everybody who's in it and how they did what they did. Something called the Candyland Zine, which is basically a still gallery that's made to look like a little magazine that's all, looks like a lot of Polaroids and shots taken on the set. And the trailer, which is 2 minutes. So available on Blu-ray and I believe DVD, and I never say it, but probably streaming as well, as everything is these days, from MVD Visual, is Candyland.